Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys.
That's us.
What is that thing you've got?
Well, scrolling banner.
Yes, you want to explain to everybody what that is and why they should have one and where they can get it.
This is the greatest thing since sourdough bread sliced. I just tried to change up the saying a little bit, but okay. So
Krispy Kreme donuts or something good like that.
Hey, and since we're recording this on St. Patrick's Day, if you go into Krispy Kreme donuts today with green on, they'll give you an original Krispy Kreme donut.
Well, unfortunately, by the time this show streams, St. Patty's Day will be about a week and a half in the rearview mirror, and they will not get any free donuts from Krispy Kreme.
You can go down the road to your favorite Ocala Krispy Kreme donut shop. So anyway, the scrolling banner is a device that is really remarkable. It's almost like a clothesline with the FAIRtax banner in it, and it's got the website on there, and of course, simple, efficient, visible. And you can go, you could stand on a street corner like the Liberty tax guy does. And you could just stand there and do this, or at a public meeting of some kind. And
you can roll that up and stick it in your pocket. It's easy to carry.
It just goes, I don't have a pocket on, but yeah, you can put it in your coat pocket but they're great. And they're on the, are they on the page? They're on the page still.
They're on fairtaxstore.org.
They're out there. So you need to get 2 or 3 of them, and they last a good long time. It's important that you have one of these. That and some of the palm cards that have the details of how the FAIRtax works, and just to be able to. And one thing I loved about how Ron Molero and Elaine did was they would have and they go eat somewhere, and they'd have a dinner somewhere, and they'd leave a tip, and they'd leave the FAIRtax card with the tip.
Mm-hmm. They would
have a couple of 3 buttons that had FAIRtax on them, a little pin button that would be on her the shoulder of her the strap of her handbag or on her shirt, and people would say, "Wow, that's really nice. What's that?" "Oh, it's the FAIRtax." And then she'd go into the short version of what the FAIRtax is, and she'd say, "Here, have this button," and she'd pull one of the buttons off. So those are things that you can do that are very simple, and your common conversations that you have and people that you meet and see in the stores or out and about, wherever you might happen to be. And you can make those personal passive contacts. You don't have to be, on like we are, talking about for 30 minutes a week. You can make that happen in a casual way. And people, it's the impression, more people that see it and that can go, "Wow, that's interesting." Then they'll hear about it somewhere or see something happen. And all of a sudden you've made a difference in getting people to kind of take a look and deeper than just the headline.
All right.
Can't live without it.
Can we get into the good stuff here now as we dive into this episode of FAIRtax Power Radio? It's important that people understand what the Congress critters are doing to their tax code.
It's every day. It's all the time. They're trying to figure out how to use the tax code to introduce legislation.
Yes, and how to use the tax code to push political agendas. And a prime example of that is our first one of the day, H.R. 1554. Yeah. This one, of course, came out of California to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide the work opportunity tax credit with respect to the hiring of veterans, but get this, in the field of renewable energy.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, hire veterans in the field of renewable energy, help them build your windmills and stuff like that. And you can get a work opportunity tax credit for hiring veterans in the field of renewable energy if this bill passes, H.R. 1554.
And I'm all for encouraging people to hire veterans. I think it's probably the single most important thing that business owners can do is first look at the veterans, because first of all, they're highly specialized in training. But why are we using the tax code to push them in a direction, as opposed to letting the market dictate where that person might have an opportunity for employment.
Well, I'm all in favor of renewable energy. Use everything we got.
Absolutely.
But if you start picking winners and losers with the tax code, then you get stuff that might not be economically viable, and you're pushing that, and that's a mess for everybody.
The market figure it out. Let the market decide the winners and losers, because that's where it's going to end up anyway. That's
Absolutely.
That's where it's going to end up anyway. Yeah.
All right, try this one on for size. HR 1483. This is kind of similar: to amend the Internal Revenue Code to repeal fossil fuel subsidies for oil companies, and your favorite phrase, for other purposes. That one came out. That one's also from the left coast. That's Representative Blumenauer from Oregon.
Okay,
that's it.
Well, I mean, again, I think that, using the tax code for all this, these guys are sitting back there going, and for other purposes. I mean, that just opens the gate for any type of thing to be added 5 minutes from now or 15 years from now, that could impact many other portions of how taxes are calculated. And that's the big thing, is it's so convoluted now. You're going to miss, has somebody written a program that ties all of this together where you are guaranteed of an exact amount based on all of the changes that are on the tax code? I don't think that I don't know that there's a human being alive. There probably isn't a computer that could compute to a specific number whether or not you're getting the best dollar, best tax thing best tax.
Yes. Well, I don't think computers can understand the tax code any better than humans can. And a human would have to impart its knowledge of the fair tax into the computer to make it work. So I'm not taking that bet. Try this one.
And they're still on DOS 2.1, I think.
Okay. This is HR 1414. This one doesn't quite rise to the level of my favorite Hall of Shame entry about the definition of municipal solid waste. But HR 1414, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to clarify the definition of a broker and for other purposes.
In case it's not a broker that you want to clarify, you can stick something else in there.
Yes,
broker, like a real estate broker, or like a
real estate broker or stock broker. I don't know. I can't find in the Internal Revenue Code the definition of a broker that they're trying to change here. But that was that's just I don't know what the word is. It's just aggravating that the tax code contains all that garbage in it.
And how relevant is it? I mean, it might just be in there for one particular business category or one particular business. Could very well be that would be stuck in there for that one person. And since they want to make sure they can get others involved, they put for other purposes in there. And then we're back to square one. And it just, I'm going to try to think of a bill that can be written to go in to the tax code that would just be about and for other purposes.
Okay. Well, see if you can figure out what state this one comes from. Okay. This is HR 1363, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide bonus depreciation for certain space launch expenditures and for other purposes.
Florida.
Absolutely. That's Bill Posey here, Florida District 8, that to provide bonus depreciation for certain space launch expenditures. Why don't we just get rid of the entire tax code so depreciation of stuff like that doesn't make any difference?
Right. And for folks that are just joining us, maybe this is your first show. This whole segment has nothing to do with, you need to take notes about all of what we're talking about here with all this. Although it is important to understand that the tax code is being used to propel certain initiatives by representatives, but it's irrelevant if you got rid of the Internal Revenue Service and the burdensome income tax, you wouldn't have to worry about all of this that we're talking about. It would be back to what's another way to get a bill passed. Maybe the normal way.
Who knows?
This is the normal way. I don't know.
That is the normal way. Collect the lobbyist cash, introduce the bill. Even if it doesn't pass, you still get to keep the cash. It's a corrupt system that is entirely replaced by the fair tax, at least the taxation part of it. There will still be lobbying on other issues, as we mentioned last week. But I say we still got to get back into that and look at the numbers behind the lobbying efforts here one of these weeks. We did that once before. Yes. A long time ago. I think Ron and I did that one several years ago. I think I'll get you to dig in there with me one of these times. But this one is going in the Hall of Shame. Absolutely. We remember we had a guy kind of take issue with us about you don't put a bill that has a good intention in the Hall of Shame. Well, I think this one deserves to be in the Hall of Shame both ways. This is HR 1284. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to adjust the rate of income tax of a publicly traded corporation based on the ratio of compensation of the corporation's highest paid employee to the median compensation of the corporation's employees and for other purposes. In other words, if you pay your CEO too much money relative to what to pay the rest of your employees, we're going to sock you with a tax cut. That goes in the Hall of Shame.
Right to the file cabinet, right to the file folder. That's a good one.
You can guess that one came out of California. Representative Mark Desaulnier, Desaulnier. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's California District 10. Says if you pay your CEO too much money in relation to what you pay everybody else, we're going to sock you with a higher tax bill. That goes away with the fair tax, by the way.
It gets wiped out completely. That's a tangled mess. It's absolutely a tangled mess. The whole tax code, everything, publication 17. The fact that they're trying to get the ill-gotten gains from people who steal stuff and the drug.
I don't know how closely you watch Facebook, but there have been a couple of memes in the past week or so with that exact segment of publication 17 that we highlighted here on FAIRtax Power Radio about reporting the fair market value of the stuff you steal.
Yeah, and then that will confirm for the county tax records that you have a boat that you didn't have last year that you stole from somebody 5 miles away. Is now on your yard, so you're going to have to pay property tax on it.
Oh, mercy. Okay. Well, there are some proposals, at least on state level, to either reduce or eliminate some of their property taxes with a consumption tax based on the fair tax. There is no federal property tax, so the fair tax gets rid of the federal income tax. But it's kind of cool that other states, especially Alabama and Georgia and Nebraska, are the three we mentioned most often, that are looking at replacing their state level income taxes with a fair tax style consumption tax. And hopefully that'll go through and folks see how well that works on the state level, and that'll help us get it through on the national level as well.
I think that'll be the case. I think it has to happen at the state level first, and people get a taste of what the benefit is at their local level. North Carolina's income tax is progressively every year dropping down lower and lower and lower, very incrementally, but it's happening. And I think that's why we see a lot of people moving into North Carolina. I see.
You can tell the difference there in North Carolina. North Carolina has a state income tax. There is no state income tax here in Florida, but so there's really no state income tax to replace here in Florida. But Texas, if I'm not mistaken, they have no income tax either. But they're one of the states that looking at reducing property taxes with a fair tax style thing. I think Jade Wiley looked at that a while back. We have to dig that article up. But anyhow, that's our Hall of Shame entry for this time around on FAIRtax Power Radio. And again, we go to congress.gov, put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes up in the search bar at the top, select just legislation in the current Congress, and see what the Congress critters are trying to do to the tax code. And if people understood what was going on with the tax code and all of the crazy stuff that's in it, they would be a lot more prone to say, hey, let's get rid of that and replace it all with a fair tax.
Absolutely. It's time. And again, we were talking a second ago about states that could enact a fair tax style state version of a consumption tax. Folks will see it right at their front door, literally, with things that happen in their neighborhood and all. And I think it may take a minute, but I think eventually folks are going to come around, and we've got to do this. It will help our economy, which right now is in a tailspin because of this sustained inflation that we're feeling at everywhere within especially groceries for folks, and the cost of electricity, the energy costs are high. Everything's run up 6 or 7% sustained for a number of years now.
All righty. Well, let's move on here on FAIRtax Power Radio. We will continue with our series of the FAIRtax is Good For. If you were with us a couple of weeks ago, we did one on the FAIRtax is Good for the Working Poor. And if you want to go back and look at us on Rumble or go back into our YouTube channel and dig that up, we were actually addressing the positive things that the FAIRtax would do for people at the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. Let them bring home their entire paycheck, get the prebate every month, stuff like that. There's a flip side to that coin. So we're going to call this one the FAIRtax is Good for the Working Poor Part 2, because the income tax is so rotten for them. And this is an article that you sent me from Yahoo Finance, which I think we need to go through. And I looked the first paragraph of it, oh, mercy, this is another one of these things that are sympathetic to the IRS. They're trying to, justify the multiple billions of dollars that the current administration wants to give to them. The underfunded Internal Revenue Service has been relying on ancient technology to generate paper audits that target tax benefits, such as the Earned Income Tax Credit, for lower income households. The result, financially vulnerable families are burdened with never-ending notices and refund delays. Of course, the thing you infer from that is, well, if you just give the IRS more money, that would go away. I got a better idea. Let's let the IRS go away.
Absolutely. Hat tip to reporter Rebecca Chen for Yahoo Finance for this article that was written earlier in March. The fact that working poor individuals, in some cases single moms or dads, or they have a couple of kids, they might have to have 2 jobs to bring together the amount of money that it takes to run the household. They're relatively easy to and inexpensive for the Internal Revenue Service to audit compared to more wealthy individuals and corporations, according to an associate director of policy at Prosperity Now. It's a national nonprofit driving change toward racial economic equality. This is all in this report from Yahoo Finance, quoting Ain, now at the policy person at Prosperity Now. Quote, "I can imagine a huge and very scary burden for low-income families to get these notices from the IRS and to go through that process. Can you imagine? And you keep getting these, because the Internal Revenue Service is going to, they're not going to call you on the phone, or they're going to show up at your door necessarily right away anyway. They're going to send you a notice, and here's this official-looking notice, and they're looking at this thing going, what? So you get an audit. And that's the IRS computer systems say you didn't respond to your notice, so you get a second notice because they think trying to avoid getting in touch with them, and it can go so far as to send a notice of intent to levy, even when you've already responded. This information from Ann Lewis, who is a CPA and chair of the Tax Executive Committee at the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. So nearly 50% of the IRS total audits went to families making less than $25,000. Let me say that again a little slowly. Nearly 50% of the IRS's total audits went to families making less than $25,000 and claimed the EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit.
Yeah, they say that's a big trigger for an audit.
Yeah, Syracuse University's Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse brought that number. 50% of the IRS's total audits went to families making less than $25,000 and claimed the Earned Income Tax Credit. The burden of the IRS audits disproportionately falls on lower income families, households making less than $25,000, facing the largest audit scrutiny among other income ranges in 2022, according to the data released by Syracuse University's track department.
The thing that really struck me with this article was, you read about this Prosperity Now is described as a national nonprofit driving change toward racial economic equality. So from that description, it's not really too hard to figure out which side of the political spectrum these folks fall on. But then when they are quoted as saying families with low incomes are relatively easy and inexpensive to audit compared to more wealthy individuals, they are admitting, hey, the IRS, the income tax is bad for the people that we're trying to help. And hopefully we can get more people that are on that side of the political spectrum to realize exactly what's going here and get on board with a fair tax, because fair tax gets rid of all of this, every bit of it.
So the IRS may be holding refunds, for example, tax refunds from from the lower income households because the audits are going, for a long extended period of time. The IRS has recently released a new website backed up by their DOS 1.0 computer system. To help fix issues faster, many families must amend returns during an audit, which take up to another 16 weeks. And a lot of families rely on that refund to pay their bills going forward. And that's the challenge right now. The young lady we were talking about a minute ago, Lewis, said that a young family claim on the child tax credit. The kids under the age of 4, they're working, they're trying to do their best. It's a real hardship for them. The CPA that we were talking about, Lewis, has been waiting for that refund since April of 2022. At the time of the interview, they were talking back in February, just a month ago, in February of this year, and they're not even able to tell the family when they're going to get the refund while this audit is going on.
Yeah, but the CPA said something else that really jumped off the page at me. Said that some taxpayers are so afraid of the IRS that they just pay the agency even if they're in the right and the IRS is in the wrong. They are scared that the IRS is going to come get them, so they just pay up money that they don't actually owe.
Right.
That goes away with the fair tax.
Yes, the clock is ticking, and the specter of the collection process of the Internal Revenue Service. The folks that are well heeled, that have a battery of attorneys and are a corporation with the tax attorney that works in their business. They can outlast an IRS audit and have the money to do so. And the Internal Revenue Service realizes, well, heck, it's going to take us years to get this ironed out. And it's going to cost us a certain amount of money for our attorneys. So what's the quickest, easiest way to get to build in terms of who to audit time wise? It's us. It's lower income families. It's us. It's as opposed to the giant corporation or somebody who's making $200,000 or $300,000 a year. And compared to the IRS, You hear about all the stories and everything, and you hear these radio ads or TV ads you see, or a magazine ad or something on the internet that says, let us help you solve your IRS problems. The IRS is the largest the largest collection agency in the world, and so on and so forth. So you hear all of this, and then you see that notice come in your mailbox, and you go, "Oh man, doggone it! Now I'm going to sit down for sometimes a couple of years, maybe, and I need that money. I need my money now. I need my refund."
Indeed. Well, I want to skip down to actually, there were some comments made at the end of this article, and one of them really caught my eye. It said, "I am a retired 40-year CPA. Trust me when I say this category of taxpayers, i.e. the low-income folks, does indeed receive the most IRS notices for one simple reason. They make the most mistakes filing their returns. It's not a case of targeting lower income. It's automatic IRS notices being sent due to mistakes on the return." Okay, so they're trying to justify this. Oh, no. We're just going after the folks that are making mistakes. Well, again, get rid of this incredibly complicated, cumbersome, and unfathomable tax code that people, even high intelligence, high folks, have a hard time understanding with. Let's just get rid of this entire thing. And then all of these people that don't understand the tax code and are making all these mistakes on their returns, they could benefit by not being audited anymore. How about that?
Yeah, and so I love
an answer to that. Fair enough. If the tax system was more simple, fewer mistakes would be made, but then maybe not. But that's it. Yeah, if you're going to have a lot of audits of people that are making mistakes because the tax code is so complicated, they can't understand it and they can't comply with it, well, just give them something really simple to deal with, and you've got your problem solved. Get rid of it all, replace it with a fair tax.
Right, and that's the thing I think that we try to hammer home here on FAIRtax Power Radio every week is let's get back to simplicity. Life is complex enough, and I always talk about, in the cycle, we're in the tax season now. April 15th is looming. We're actually I think the 18th is the day that the taxes are. But think about the burden that would be lifted from the individuals of the family's shoulders, and especially at the low income level where they're fighting hard, and making decisions, based on the amount of money that they have available today. What am I going to buy today, or what am I not going to buy today? And so if you on Friday get your check under the fair tax, you wouldn't have that burden of the income tax being taken out in advance of you getting your check. You would have the whole check void of any deduction for federal taxes. It would all come to you. Then you would be able to decide how you were going to spend your money on your family, for your family first, before the Internal Revenue Service gets for the Treasury gets their money, because the Internal Revenue Service would be gone under the fair tax. But the beauty of it is that burden, that psychological burden, is gone. It's gone. It is
all right. We're just about out of time here. I want to hit on one other little point here real quick. The reasons why we couldn't do this year were rather complicated. I'm not going to get into it, but we didn't really have a fair tax presence at CPAC this year. But Mike Huckabee, we'll see his show that runs on TBN, is now talking more about the fair tax. And there's a plan here in Florida anyway. And of course, anybody anywhere in the country that wants to join in on this, that there are plans afoot, if I'm reading this correctly, that Mike Huckabee is going to have John Linder, who was the original FAIRtax co-sponsor and the co-author of the FAIRtax books with Neil Bortz, have John Linder and Buddy Carter, the current sponsor of the FAIRtax, on his show. And we're thinking if we can find out when that show tapes, that FAIRtax people from all over the country need to descend on Nashville that weekend and be in the audience while that show is being taped. So if we can find that information out far enough in advance, we'll put it out here. Yeah, bring your scrolling banner. We'll put that out here on FAIRtax Power. Wouldn't that be cool to go up to the Huckabee show with all your FAIRtax gear?
That would be fantastic. Yeah, and important. The impressions are important. Mike Huckabee has a big microphone and has been passionate about the fair tax for a long time.
Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we've got for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thanks again so much for watching, joining, and sharing the videos. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, providing you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you will demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? What'd you say, 40,000? Okay, keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is what?
16%. Okay, and then on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right. And you?
Oh,